we have a guest today, Thomas Sheridan. He published a book a couple of years ago called Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, which is followed up recently with Defeated Demons. I met Thomas recently at the Dunstable event, the Southern Event and UK Column held. I think it's fair to say, Thomas, that although many people in the audience would have been quite familiar with a lot of the topics that were issued that day, I think yours have been spellbound, if I may use that word. It was very quiet in the auditorium, and people were actually riveted by what you had to say. Just for the viewers, I'm sure you've done this many times on video, could you just go through how you got to the stage of studying psychopathy, psychopaths, and a general system which you call the psychopathic control grid, basically, that we're all being forced to live in at the moment?
Hi Neil, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Are you there, Neil?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Your signal is very bad. You just asked, I think you gave me an introduction there about my talk in Dunstable, and thanks for that. And also, about, I think you said, how did I get into this stuff, and is that what you said? That was the question? Yeah,
well, just basically, you describe the system which we live in as the psychopathic control grid. And, it's basically how you came to that conclusion.
Well, I think I always knew that the world didn't make any sense. I mean, even as a young child, I was aware that what we were told was reality, and what we were told was how the world functioned, and how I perceived it was not the same thing. My experience of reality was very different than what authority figures and what the 6 o'clock news was telling me. It wasn't like that for me, and for years I kept these things to myself, and occasionally I would meet people who did have similar views, that the world simply did not work the way we were told it worked. Education just didn't seem to be about knowledge, it seemed to be about enforcing belief packages on people in the guise of knowledge, and the religion never made any sense to me, and everything just seemed to be about control. And I was always amazed that wherever I went in the world, just about everyone I met was nice. Just about everyone I met was nice. No problem. They just wanted an easy life. They didn't want to bother anybody, regardless of what they were and who they were and what their origins were. And yet the world was so dysfunctional. And then in the mid-90s, I took, just through some happenstance, while I was working as a graphic designer for Goldman Sachs, I became aware of psychopathology. And that was almost like the key that unlocked the Pandora's box for me. The world then began to unlock the dysfunctionality, not just in society, but in my own life. Parts of my own life that made no sense started to make a lot of sense. And suddenly it became very obvious to me that there were people on this planet who were different than us. Now, they're not aliens or anything like that. They're not. They're people, but they're wired completely different in a psychological sense. They're absolutely parasitic predators who have no remorse within them and only see the rest of the human race as something they can use and manipulate, and they have no guilt about this. They will do this without even considering the consequences it may have on others. And the reason why this knowledge wasn't well known, even though it was scientifically well validated, there's been tremendous research gone into psychopathology over the decades, was because society, and by that I mean the actual authority, the control structure, had a vested interest in keeping this knowledge from getting out there, because the obvious conclusion is when you discover this knowledge, you start to realize certain people in your lives are psychopaths. But then a very different thing happens. You have this noetic realization that this is what's wrong with the planet. This is what's wrong. The human race is dysfunctional only because we're made dysfunctional. The human race is not the problem. The problem is this parasitic predator who lives amongst us, called the psychopath, who now, well, they've been basically trying to run the show since probably the time of Babylon, when the first sort of structures around what we have in terms of present-day economics and other sociological conditions first took root. What academics lovingly refer to as the birth of civilization, when in reality civilization existed long before that. It was the birth of psychopathic civilization and happened in Babylon. And so these types have now coagulated at the top. They've been more or less in charge for a long time, but the world we have today has allowed these psychopathic individuals to take control. And the world is dysfunctional not because human beings are dysfunctional. The world is dysfunctional because of psychopaths. And then I took it to make my mission to make sure as many people knew about this stuff as possible.
Well, we had a brief conversation along those lines at Dunstable, where I think we were talking about, if the people actually understand the types of people that are making decisions supposedly for our betterment, which everybody can see clearly isn't. If they could understand that they're actually psychopathic people, for want of a better word, they can perhaps understand why things are done which don't make any sense. Like you said yourself, things didn't make sense to you. But I'm gathering at the time you didn't realise it was because of the psychopathic side of things. You looked into that and discovered that's what it was. But if people can understand that these types of people actually do exist, they're not just a Jack Nicholson character in a movie with an axe banging down a door. They're actually people who are consciously preying on the rest of us to achieve whatever ends they want to achieve for their own selfishness, ego, power, whatever. And something you just said there about society being made dysfunctional. I mean, in your opinion, is that something which is a deliberate program, I suppose, to make us more malleable to them? Is that?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that what that's for?
Yes, it's absolutely, that's true. It's called crazy making. That's the actual term used to describe it in psychiatry and clinical psychology. What a psychopath does in a normal relationship with a person is that they destroy their sense of self. A psychopath inside themselves is in an internal state of chaos. Herbie Cleckley, the first scientist scientific individual who wrote about psychopaths in a scientific way in his book The Mask of Sanity, described the psychopath as somebody with an internal state of chaos, psychological chaos, and then becomes a facsimile of an otherwise normal human being, and then uses this to control others purposefully. And it does it on purpose. And you said then that most people, when they hear psychopath, they think someone with an axe. Well, the reality is very few of them are physically violent. Almost none of them are, actually. That's an image that Hollywood has put out there for us to believe in. So we don't look at the real psychopaths. But all psychopaths are violent. But how they do it is through psychology. They wage war upon human consciousness. Be it in a relationship with a person, they will drive them insane. They will have them after a while believing that black is white and white is black. And they'll do it to us in society. And the reason for this is when you acquiesce, when you're so unable to make a decision for yourself, when you can no longer think in any cognitive or logical way or intuitive way, you hand over your psychological sovereignty and your consciousness sovereignty to authority structures, because you no longer have the belief that you are capable of managing the affairs of your own life. Now, a very good example of this recently would be the Stability Pact vote in Ireland and the push to have us vote yes here. One of the two main mantras were yes for jobs and yes for stability. As soon as the vote was passed, the first thing they did was they started laying people off, mainly in the public sector. The amount of jobs did not increase, neither in the private sector either. As regarding stability, that didn't happen either. The standard of living here continues to be eroded, while at the same time, this IMF money that was pumped into the likes of Bank of Ireland has been a complete failure. Bank of Ireland yesterday announced losses that were three times greater than what they were before the so-called stability thing vote was foisted upon us. And what happens then is that the people see this and they go nuts because they cannot rationalise the lies and the hypocrisy of their political and business classes. And eventually they just give up and start watching X Factor or the sports because they no longer believe that they have any power in this world. And that's exactly what a psychopath does to a person in a relationship, and exactly what a psychopath does to us in terms of controlling us within the control grid. They're the ultimate merchants of nonsense, and they've deliberately made the world as dysfunctional as possible, so we feel that we have no stake in the outcome of anything that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the same thing happened after the Lisbon Treaty. I was there campaigning against that when I lived in Ireland as well. And the politicians at that time, they were saying yes for jobs, yes for, I think they used the word security then, and all the rest of it. And as soon as the vote was rigged and fixed and passed, it was just business as usual. Everything went backwards again. And the same thing happened with this fiscal treaty. But that's another issue, I suppose. Talking on those lines, I mean, voting is one of the ultimate control mechanisms that they use, isn't it? I mean, surely, because if they make you vote, they make you think that you have a say in things, when ultimately you don't, because they can just say whatever they want to get people to vote, and then it's once people vote them in, that's it. It doesn't matter.
Yes, democracy is, after the banking system, has been the greatest scam that they've ever foisted upon us. This belief that we somehow can vote, and this vote means something, when in reality we're not voting for anything other than a change on the door. The agenda, the psychopathic agenda behind the scenes continues on willy-nilly, and it goes on everywhere. You see that, like, Obama did not change anything drastically from Bush, and that's how the next president of the United States after him will do exactly the same. It just, nothing will change. You get tokenist platitudes that are made to seem like really important things. A really good one recently that Obama did in the United States was that he said that he, in principle, supported gay marriage. Now, he didn't do anything to actually make gay marriage happen. He didn't do anything to, legalize civil partnerships with homosexuals at the national level. But that was enough. That statement after the so-called right wing pretending to be homophobic when many of them would be bisexual psychopaths or asexual psychopaths anyway, pretending to be homophobic, the gay community in America suddenly it explodes in this euphoria of that Obama's going to save us. What a wonderful man! I can guarantee you for a fact that Obama will never pass gay marriage and will never allow civil partnerships for same-sex couples. But what's happened is people are given these straws, and these minor straws which mean very little in the whole scheme of things, is how we're kept in control. We're kept in control by this idea that democracy actually means something. If we vote for our guy, no matter all the other guys and women that we've voted for have all betrayed us, this time, this will be the one who really will change things. And it never, ever happens because it's engineered to never happen. Just like a psychopath in a relationship says, you can go anytime you want. You don't have to stay with me. But what they've done is they've made a situation where the person can't walk away because they've taken their finances over. They've ruined their lives to the point where if they did walk away, they'd be financially destroyed and maybe even homeless. And this is what the psychopaths are like. They make us all, it's just like a cult leader. And that's really what an elected politician today is, a cult leader. If you look at the Obama president 2008 campaign, it was a masterpiece in mind control, NLP, and psychological engineering. It just played on the whole good cop, bad cop game that both Bush and Obama played. And this is what democracy is. Democracy is a psychopathic institution that does not serve our interest, and we shouldn't be voting in this garbage anymore.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. again, we're following this kind of line of argument, if you like. I heard you talking on the UK column the other day there, and I think Brian was asking you if these politicians work together, and you were suggesting that they only work together insofar as they may see something in the other psychopath, if you like, which could be of use to them in the future. Now, obviously the European Union, possibly everybody at the head of what once was a nation state in Europe is of the same kind of calibre, psychopathic personality. And they're in some form or other collectively waging a war on all of us, because I suppose, I'm only surmising here, they see that as a way of maintaining their own supposed superiority over the rest of us, when nothing could be further from the truth. And you actually say that in your books, saying that these guys have no creative ability whatsoever, and some of them have very limited intelligence. But all they're good at is actually latching on to, say, the zeitgeist of the time, if you like, and running with it, and taking advantage of every nook and cranny they can get their finger into, or any pie they want to slice up, and just running with it. I mean, in terms of like the European Union and these the Council of Ministers, or whatever they want to call themselves, or the G20, or any of those guys, I mean, is that what they're about in that form? Is that the rationale that they can kind of stick with as much as they need to maintain control over the vast majority?
Yeah, it's almost like an honour among thieves kind of thing. Like you'd have a bunch of guys would go rob a bank, but none of them would actually trust each other. It's the same kind of idea with the psychopaths in the political system. They're all in it for themselves ultimately, but they found these useful sort of fellow psychopaths around them. Now, they're not working consciously as a team. They're not saying, we are team psychopath. It's nothing like that. They just found that's just how these monsters have coagulated at the top of the structure. And you said there about that they have no creativity. That's because they're parasites. They're not only parasites, financial parasites, emotional parasites. They're parasites of ideas. They're parasites of concepts. They're parasites of dogma, and they're parasites of the paradigm. They will latch onto it and pretend and dress themselves up in it, no matter, not just politics, anything, religion, you name it, and they will embellish themselves with the trappings of whatever the structure is meant to represent, its ideals and so forth. But there's no reality to it. Then there's nothing there. There's nothing below the surface. It's purely just a makeup and a chameleon-like posture they're putting on in order to manipulate the others by winning their trust and making you believe that they're on the same side as you. And that's how they've all coagulated at the top of the pyramid. They've been doing this all their lives. They change. This is one of the absolute traits of the psychopath, is that they're constantly switching personas to become what you want them to be. This is why democracy is a fantastic system for a psychopath. Tell me what you want to be, vote for me, and I'll pretend I'll be that. And then when they get elected, they change persona and they turn into somebody else. They're a very, very different kind of human being than we understand human beings to be. They're not like us. There's nothing inside there other than this predatory intent, and they will do and say and become anything together. And they've all clustered at the top of this pyramid, but it's only because the whole system has been made so dysfunctional for so long that they're literally the only ones who can get up there now.
Well, I mean, I suppose if they've created the system, they understand how to work it, and the rest of us just wonder what to do and how they can act in such a despicable manner, I suppose, when they can go off to places like Afghanistan and Iraq and just bomb the living daylights out of people for no apparent reason, and shrug their shoulders and say, well, it's just business, it's just and then form an interfaith foundation after they've killed millions of Muslims. Yeah, absolutely. I think Brian was talking about something similar in the UK column the other day. Cameron's setting up something about a war on hunger after spending nearly £10 billion on the Olympics and all this kind of thing. And people in Spain have taken to kind of basically raiding supermarkets to feed the poor. and 15% of children in Spain are malnourished. And you know, here's Cameron saying he's a champion of the war on hunger. You know.
Yeah, that's because the version of them that's the Mr. Charity or Mrs. Charity is not the same person who you know wastes money on big sporting events that leave countries bankrupt. That's the persona switching thing again. What one version of them does, the other version of them is not responsible for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering about these characters, the cameras, the players, the ballads. Obviously, there are people controlling them, and they are the ultimate psychopathic types, or they would regard themselves as you know the pinnacle of humanity, if you like, although they haven't a clue what humanity is. But when they're puppets, if you like, as I say, the prime ministers, etc. When they step out of line, I mean, are they basically just shunned in the way that a psychopath in a personal relationship would just shun his partner? Is that how it works? Is that how these guys just disappear off the scene all of a sudden, or some scandals brought out to bring them down?
It depends on how badly they want it, and how quickly they want to get rid of them. If they know dangerous stuff about the other psychopath, even if they're not a psychopath, especially, well, they'll do it mostly to people who aren't psychopaths, they will just shun them. They will just be dismissed and forgotten and never considered again, as if they never existed. If they have something damning on the psychopath, a smear campaign will then be implemented, and that's when you know they'll be trapped. You know, they'll be found in a hotel room with an underage 17-year-old prostitute, with a Daily Mail photographer outside. That kind of thing. You know, that would be that. But they only do that if they really want someone has something damning. And quite often they'll murder them. If you look at the particulars surrounding the Kennedy case, there's just got everyone who might have known something about the real story behind the assassination of JFK. All of them, dozens and dozens of them, were all murdered very, very soon afterwards. The same thing. You look at the amount of scientists who dropped dead or committed suicide, who were close to the Blair administration regarding the time of the weapons of mass destruction evidence. You know, not only David Kelly, but many of them, people associated with him, have been found dead, hanging out of trees. You know, the usual story. They were not depressed, they were not upset, and then the next thing you know, they're dead. So that's the extreme they'll go to. But most times they will just implement a smear campaign and dismiss people like they never existed. But if they're really dangerous and they could write a book, or they could make a documentary that could really damage the psychopath, they will be bumped off.
Yeah, I always find it amazing that anybody of any importance seems to fall out of a window all of a sudden. From 20, 30 stories for some reason, I don't know why. I think we're going to go to a short musical break, and then we'll come back and possibly lead up to how the traits to look for to recognise psychopath, and then follow it up with how to get away from them and get yourself back in some sort of order, if you like. So if you want to put the music on, that'd be great. Or perhaps not.
Can't you see I'm still your daughter, standing with my vision once again? When we don't talk and we don't listen, we don't know what we are missing, and the anger in between has got to end. I've come for peace. I've come for peace. Let your anger release. I've come for peace. Let's stop spitting out this fodder. We both crave that holy water. I come here in love, not to pretend. I'm willing now to listen, wanna know what I've been missing, and the anger in between has got to end. We've common ground, let's find it with the love that lies behind it. Lay down the angry words we can't defend. In the fires of redemption, there can be no self-pretension. and the anger in between has got to end. I've come for peace. I've come for peace. Let your anger release. I've come for peace. It's time to act, this war is pressing. We all need that holy blessing. Good ideas and solutions we must blend. It's time to stop the burning, find the peace we are so yearning. And the anger in between has got to end. Let's stand for peace. Let's stand for peace. Let our anger release. Let's stand for peace. Join me in peace. Let's make peace. Let our anger release. Join me in peace. Let our anger release. Let's stand for peace.
Wilson told his mammy that he would go home, but not home. Soft a while my mammy said apart, he like a fool as he replied, in faith I'll have a wife. Do I live for a wife in my bed? I may not fail. Oh, now to have a wife. To the smoke from my house, and to my back and to my head. Scarcely was he weathered, for what nice face, that he was in a happy face. Lofty was he headed, and cheeks looked thin, and to repent he did not speak. A big for such a wife, what a life did I live for a wife in my bed? I may not fail you. Oh, they to have a wife. Oh, take a smile from my heart, she's a wreck to my back and to my bed. Oh, that our bachelors be left by crying well, to live so soon. Better go to Terry and alone to lie, like a fool with a fool cry. The big for such a wife. Oh, what a life do I live to find a wife in my bed? I may not fail you. Oh, now to have a wife. Oh, Jesus, to my heart, and the wreck to my back and to my bed.
Oh.
Welcome back to Southern Independent UK Radio with our guest Thomas Sheridan, author of Puzzling People, Labyrinth of the Psychopath and Defeated Demons. And also there's a short book which I picked up from Thomas called Reject and Survive, which just came out this year as well, The Psychopathic Control Groups, which is probably a good introduction to the subject. It's very easy reading, as is the Puzzling People book. Thomas, we were just talking at the break about how you go about spotting a psychopath, and there are specific traits which you've listed, and also secondary traits which some may have and some may not, to some degree or another. Would you like to just go through the main traits that they all have?
Well, the first thing I would say in recognizing psychopaths, or you encounter an individual who you feel may be psychopathic, the first thing to do is go with your intuition. Your intuition is very important. You'll find in the very early days of encountering these people that you'll always think to yourself, there's something not right there. There's just, as nice as this person is, as friendly as they are, as charming as they are, there's just something not right with this person. And that will be your first clue to start, asking questions. Now, like I said, most times a creep is a creep, or a jerk is a jerk, or an obnoxious person is an obnoxious person. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're something very, very different. And that's when you have to start keeping checklists of these people. There are 5 absolute psychopathic traits that all psychopaths have. They have to have all 5 of them. If they have 4 of them, they're not a psychopath. If they have 5 of them, they are. This came about years of research, both looking at the documents created by professionals, research bodies, universities, teaching hospitals, psychiatrists, as well as observations from interviews I've done with psychopaths myself, as well as following the life stories and biographies of several very well-known psychopaths. I created an access database. And from this database, 5 of the traits, I started noting down the trait every psychopath seemed to possess, and 5 of them scored 100%. The first one is what most people would probably know about psychopaths, is they have no remorse. They have no remorse. They lack any kind of conscience, and they will show no genuine guilt, shame, or remorse for their actions. No matter how appalling what they've done to people, no matter how much damage they've done to people, they will always never show any genuine regret. That's the main difference between them and us. And if they do, even if they've been caught red-handed, they will always try and make out that somehow it wasn't their fault. So if they steal money off an elderly person, they will make up a story like, well, that person would have just wasted it anyway on Home Shopping Network or on QVC, or they would have spent it on cats and dogs. There's always a justification for it. They'll never admit they were actually just a filthy thief. So that's the first thing. They'll never ever show any remorse. The next one is they all invoke pity to manipulate or control others. They always come with a sob story when you first meet them. Or even if they're running for an election, they'll always talk about how difficult their childhood was, or how they suffered oppression or racism, or how they were victimized growing up, and how every single person they ever knew in a relationship before them had all done terrible things to them. It's always like, poor me, poor me. And this is to source out empathic, good-natured people, because they know good, empathic, good-natured people are the ones that they will actually serve them the best, because these people will feel sorry for them and want to help them. The next one is they all have, the adult ones now, they all have mysterious pasts and vague personal histories. There always seems to be missing gaps in their lives that you can't seem to get any information on. That's because they've been living not only double lives, but quadruple and multiple lives all at the same time, and they've left a trail of nasty business behind them. And they have a vested interest in you not finding that out, because they'll have literally left a trail of disaster and people who know things about them behind them. And you'll discover the most amazing things about them. You'll find out after years of knowing them that they were married and had a bunch of kids at one time that they never mentioned. You'll stumble upon these things by mistake, or you'll have found that they spent time in prison, or you'll have found that they were a completely different person with a different name and a whole different identity and a different social life that they lived. They may have been gay or straight. They could have even had a different sex. That's even been reported to me as well. The psychopath has a different sex in the past. So they always have missing pasts. And then the next one is they have high levels of the hormone testosterone. That seems to be caused by the neurochemical imbalances in their brain. Because they're addicted to adrenaline, This is why they enjoy the things they do. This is why they're not sick people who need our love and attention and care. They're addicted to pulling off scams, and this is where a smirk comes from. It's called duper's delight. That's what Robert Hare called it, of the University of British Columbia. It's when they pull a fast one on someone, they have a smirk, and that smirk is the adrenaline rush they're getting, and they feel fantastic. And that constant need for adrenaline, along with an upsurge of norepinephrine, the stress hormone in the lower part of their brainstem, constantly being released because they're constantly paranoid and in a state of fight or flight. It seems to throw off all the neurochemical imbalance in their brain and leads to an overproduction of the hormone testosterone. So they tend to be bald if they're male. They tend to have good upper body strength, a strong jawline. If they're female, they tend to have a pronounced Adam's apple and very unfeminine hands. Now, that doesn't mean all people that have high testosterone are psychopaths. It's just one of the 5 absolute traits. Now, they're the 5 absolute traits. No remorse, they invoking pity to control people, mysterious past, and high levels of the hormone testosterone. There are about 30 other traits that most of them will have. Some of them won't have many of them, but they'll generally, in general, have many of these other traits. And if you get puzzling people, they're comprehensively listed out there. But they're things like their narcissism. They believe that they were born for a special purpose. They have a history of brief or failed relationships. That our relationships always end terribly. They never have a relationship that ends on a good level. Their eyes can seem often dead and lifeless. It's a very spooky thing. Anyone who's been in a relationship with a psychopath will tell you that they'll catch them some days looking at them, and they'll literally be like a machine switched off, staring into nothingness. It's quite spooky, and that's literally what they are. The personas that they're using to work you has been switched off, and it's literally just a computer that's in sleep mode. And a lot of them will fake things like cancer. They'll pretend they have diseases or cancer, again for pity, but also to raise money or to get off work for a while, or just to distract from people catching on to them. And they'll always break their promises. And there's literally 30 of them. If you get puzzling people, you'll get them all there.
I'm just looking at some of the notes, and I think one of them that's I think everybody could probably relate to is they're trying to mimic your behaviour. They may, to try and imply that they're just like you. They're, you're a perfect match. You're this, that, and
yeah.
That's the tactic. That's the tactics politicians use, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm just one of the lads, Yeah.
Oh yeah, they'll put on the workman's hat and the high vis vest and go down to the construction site or to the rail yards or to the factory and pretend to be just like you. Yeah, that's a classic. Or go to church and see with a Bible.
Yeah, or they'll cycle to 10 Downing Street and have their documents carrying a limousine behind them there. In Ireland,
that famous shot of Tony Blair carrying his electric guitar at the 10 Downing Street when he first got elected, to make it that he was like the rock and roll prime minister.
Yeah.
A regular chap.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny in Ireland. You talk about how they have this smirk because they've got one over on people. I mean, when I lived in Ireland, and I remember, if a politician got away with something, then it was seen as oh well, fair play to him. He got away with it, and that was people in general public. And because I wasn't from Ireland, I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand how that was okay to have some politician stick his hand in your pocket and rob you, and to accept it as oh well, fair play to him. He got one over on us. Well done,
That's a cultural thing that comes from our history. Remember, we had 700 years of British rule. And it was 700 years of trying to get a fast one back at the British Empire who was running the country. So people were actively encouraged through our culture to screw the system, to try and rob it. And that was actually a good thing. But the unfortunate thing is that when we achieved independence, we didn't seem to realise that our own politicians weren't allowed to do that. But you're right about that. There is an element of in Ireland of that if the politician is corrupt and you get it in Italy as well. It's almost like, well, that's just what they're like. You know, what can you do about it? And that's also part of how the psychopaths have controlled us. They've made us almost expect, in our places like Ireland and Italy, that we're corrupt and you have to live with it.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I couldn't understand it, and I think I was abroad, and when Charlie Haughey's funeral was taking place, and the taxpayer had to pay for it, although this guy had robbed the taxpayer millions. And I couldn't quite get it. They just didn't ring right with me at all. And people in Ireland, as you say, were quite happy to do it, and I just couldn't fathom it at all.
To be fair with Charlie Haughey, his funeral did not get the thousands that the media said it did, because I was in that neighbourhood that day. Now, the media in Ireland really whipped up this thing that he was the man of the people and all this, but the reality is that the turnout for his funeral was no bigger than what you'd get for a funeral of a nobody. It was absolutely pathetic. The media, you see, you have to remember, the media create these false realities on behalf of the psychopaths as well. The media made it sound like Charlie Haughey had this amazing state funeral. He didn't. It was a small-time funeral. It was just hyped up to be that way. By the time he died, he was completely discredited, even amongst his own.
Okay, so as I say, I was abroad. I didn't even see the pictures or anything. It was just I heard it from my.
You're right, your man. Well, in general, you're right. Your man Quinn, from Quinn Insurance and the construction magnate, who's made billions. He had 5,000 people march to defend him in County Cavan last week, mainly GAA people, and that's a classic example of what we're like in this country. That if this guy did something good for my group or organisation, it doesn't matter if he's destroyed the country and everybody in the country is paying a premium on top of their insurance because of his behaviour. He's still a great guy. So you're right about that. You see, that's part of the crazy making as well. Ireland is very, very, as you know yourself from living here, is a very, very corrupt country. Very, very corrupt. And it's not just the politicians that are corrupt, but the entire structure, the civil service, the media. It's like it's the stereotype that Ireland being Italy in the rain is absolutely true. You know that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was in business in Ireland myself, and just a small cafe in Boyle, Stirling, and to try and work with others in the town, which is a small town. Nobody was interested. Everybody just wanted to get one over on everybody else. It was incredible. But going back to going forward to the solutions. I mean, your solution is no contact ever again. And in a way, this ties in with what this whole radio station is about, although in a different context. It's, they say don't buy, don't comply, ask why, meaning, don't buy into the system, don't use it, don't comply with it, and start asking questions. And I suppose, you've already alluded to that in your book. You say you don't directly question the psychopath. You start taking notes, and ensure that he doesn't know you're taking notes, or that you're concerned about a relationship or whatever it is. But I suppose the ultimate solution, as you say, is no contact ever again. Don't buy into it. Don't comply with it. Just completely distance yourself from it, and never have any contact whatsoever again with it, if at all possible. If they don't come looking for you, but you make that as hard as possible as well. So do you want to? I suppose no contact ever again is self-explanatory, but would you care to go into how extreme that can become? I mean, I suppose some people maybe need to leave the country or whatever just to get away from some people. I don't know. If you that.
Yeah, that's what you're going to have to do sometimes. I know people who are willing to change the name of their own children so the husband or the father of that child has no access to them ever again, who's a psychopath. When I say no contact ever again with a psychopath, I mean that literally. There's no grey area in this. It's building a wall between you and this creature that will stand for all eternity. And what happens to them on the other side of that wall, their failings, their achievements, and even their eventual demise will be of no concern of yours, because that thing is dead. That thing is to be left dead on the other side of that firewall in your consciousness, and never to be ever allowed back in, because no good will come from that parasite ever allowing itself in any way, shape or form, even in a casual way, to entrench itself within your consciousness. So no contact ever again is it's so beautiful actually, to the point where to me it's almost taken on a kind of I don't know what the word to use, but almost like a magical context. It actually allows people who've been ruthlessly targeted by psychopaths to give them some sense of dignity back, because ultimately they rob the psychopath of what the psychopath craves more than anything else, and that's power and control over you. Once there's no contact ever again, that whole communication is broken. And if you have to move to a different country, if you have to change your name, but in most cases you don't have to do that. You just block them on all your social networking accounts, change your phone number, block them on all your email accounts, and never, ever, ever even think about them if you can help it ever again. And if you do think about it, just think about how lucky you are that this parasite is no longer embedded within your consciousness. Now, in terms of the greater system, non-compliance is exactly the same thing as no contact ever again. It's exactly the same thing. We do not comply with the psychopathic control grid in the same way. I will never set foot in a polling booth station ever again. I will never buy another mainstream newspaper ever again. I do not own a TV. I do not engage with a system that cannot be reformed because it's been engineered to never be able to be reformed. I try to be self-sufficient as possible with the whole...
So?
So is that the ice cream van?
Yeah. Don't know what happened there.
I would encourage you to be compliant with the local ice cream man.
Yeah.
Not with the big ice cream chains like Häagen-Dazs and Ben and Jerry's and all these other multi-corporations. And that's a beautiful synchronicity there. Stick with the small local business and stay away from the big huge parasites and the conglomerates and the multinationals. Be self-sufficient as possible and get your own dignity back. And that's how we will actually bring this system down. They're trying everything to consolidate it into a globalist system where you have, it's almost a form of communism. It's definitely collectivism because they love collectivism, where you'll have one big Walmart type store that rules the world, one coffee shop called Starbucks, one fast food joint called McDonald's or whatever. You don't comply with these things. You learn to take care of yourself, and you do not have any contact again with their psychopathic structures, and it will bring the whole thing down. But all it takes is 6% of the human race to do this, and will undermine the entire system.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about synchronicity of it. It could have been a whole lot worse because the other ice cream when it comes around plays the theme tune for a few dollars more. So and this one comes out and plays Monty Python theme tune as well. So there you go. The no contact ever again thing. That's so the individual or all of us as society withdraw ourselves from the system. But on the individual level, you talk about a recovery process where people have to actually understand that it wasn't them that was to blame. They have to, understand that they were a victim and they're actually, I'm trying to think of it, a far stronger person for it because they come outside of that. Can you explain that? I mean, it's a psychological recovery program, I suppose, that you have to go through yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not only a psychological recovery program, it's a physiological one as well. What happens is the psychopath actually damages your neurology because you've had all these games played in your mind and you've been made dependent on them through things like love bombing, and also they've made you feel pathetic and incompetent without them. And they've literally rewired your brain. They've changed neural pathways. They've released hormones that you become addicted to, like dopamine. And then they've taken this away from you, and you're in a state of stress, and you're having flashes of adrenaline and norepinephrine. And what's happening here is you're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, not disorder, post-traumatic stress injury. It's not a disorder. You've actually had your brain damaged. And the only way, the first step to that, like I said, to recovery from this creature that has this parasite that got into your mind, is no contact ever again. The next thing is you've got to start fixing your brain back. is you've got to start taking good care of yourself. My second book, Defeat the Demons, goes a lot more deeply into this. But you're going to have to be very careful of not to abuse alcohol or drugs. You're going to have to learn how to depend on people who genuinely will help you through this experience without judging you. My own forum, psychopathfree.com, we have people there who have been through this experience and will help others get through it by making them feel like they weren't the biggest idiot in the world, or they make them understand that they were mind controlled perniciously and subtly, that they didn't know it until it was too late. And then there's meditations and there's other things that I've incorporated into my books that help people recover from this. It's going to take about 2 years for a person's brain to go back to the state it was before they met the psychopath. All the chemicals have to find their natural balance back again. This is why things like getting out in the fresh air, getting involved in nature, and making yourself busy, get yourself lots of hobbies, and start a business or something, just to keep your mind focused on something else. So you'll start building new neural pathways that will also give you back your self-confidence and allow you to trust people again, because often people are very damaged by these experiences. They find it hard to trust anybody. And when this happens, and when after the 2 years, and you begin your recovery, between the second and the third year, you will notice a noticeable change in yourself. You'll start having improved health. You'll start walking better. You'll start looking better. You'll start looking younger. And by the end of the third year, you'll be literally reborn as a new person with this whole set of skills that you never had before in understanding the world as it really is. And because you'll know how to deal with psychopaths. It's very important you get the information about psychopaths. But because you know how to deal with them, you'll never allow another one of these creatures into your life ever again, because the psychopaths will be very aware that you're not food for them now. You're no longer game, and you will be left alone, and you won't have to be on guard, and you'll just find that in general you'll go on to have a much better life, and you'll find that you'll have a much more purposeful life, because you'll be the captain of your own ship rather than a parasitic consciousness that's driving you towards their agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a word of warning, I mean, you also mentioned in your books that these types of creatures troll the Facebook pages and Twitter and these kind of whatever chat forum they can find to try and identify people they want to victimise or, feed off of, and they contact them through internet sites or dating sites, whatever. And people should be very, very aware that these people are out there specifically for that purpose. They're not interested in you as a person, they're just interested in what you can give them.
Oh yeah, and they become when they do become easy to spot, it actually becomes a form of entertainment. Psychopath spotting can actually be fun. Like, I've actually seen psychopaths actually run away from me when they were introduced to me because they knew right away I was on to them. I've seen friends who become very aware of this issue as well, looking at these psychopaths in the way I used to look at them 3 or 4 years ago, and they know exactly what they're dealing with. This is why we will win this, because if enough of us have this information, we will banish them all to the margins of society, where they will no longer be able to feed on anybody, and they'll just vanish down into obscurity and nothingness, entropy. And so this is a very easy winnable battle. And when you deflect your first or second psychopath, either through dismissing them or even seeing that they're obviously nervous around you, you actually begin to feel like a warrior or something. You actually feel amazing, like you have a special knowledge, like you're a ninja or something. And that's an incredible experience to have that, to know that these things not only do not see any value in targeting you, but actively are afraid of you. I've seen it now with my own eyes, experienced it, and it absolutely is fun. And then the opposite effect happens. You start to find people coming into your life who are absolutely wonderful and fabulous and have the same agendas and the same outlook on humanity you do, that you don't even need to have to join groups. They migrate towards you. So to have this knowledge really does, really does improve your life immensely.
in general, don't buy into it, don't comply with it, and ask questions as to what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then never have any contact with them again, as you say.
Exactly. Your signal is very poor right now, Neil.
Okay. Well, we're just going off there at the moment, so it's a dodgy signal here. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. I hate to cut you short, but we have another show to produce right behind you. And welcome again to the UWW Marathon. And I'm going to play a little bit of We Come for Peace while I get the next show up. And we'll be right back.
Baptize me in the water.